Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gaming Daddy channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're talking about video games today, and we're looking at it from the perspective of a lot of the free-to-play games that are hitting the market. For those of you who are members of this channel or audience members, you know that we talk about Ubisoft, Tom Clancy games, and even some other games across the industry. But what the current trend is showing right now is that there are actually a lot of free-to-play games that are coming to the market. And I think there are a few explanations that could probably point towards why we're seeing all of them show up at close to the same time. And those reasons will be within some measurable reality, if you were to understand what I mean. Now, if you think about some sort of this originations of this big name free to play games, you have to go back to kind of how a lot of these games have thrived in the past. So PUBG was one of the very few free to play models that did come out and, in my opinion, pretty much did a good job of, pretty much attracting a lot of gamers within the community who could pretty much just jump in for a very small fee and then eventually continue to spend. So PUBG wasn't necessarily that, a huge free to play model, if you were to ask me, but it did a good job in drawing people. As time went on, we started to see other games like Fortnite, which was pretty much free to play, and that just drew a lot bigger crowd. If you just bought your console or a PC, it was one of those games you could play, and Fortnite saw a lot of success. In fact, Epic Games has used a lot of its earnings to just furnish developers with all kinds of things. I mean, as a, aspiring and newbie developer myself, I can tell you that all that Fortnite money, I'm somewhat happy about because it just really makes a whole lot of stuff easier. And Epic Games is just leveraging all of those funds. And then you had Apex Legends, which was also an EA Respawn game that then also broke into the market and allowed for people to be able to do very well. And then following that, you had Destiny, which was once a paid game that eventually went to the free-to-play model. Now, what you see is these games, many of them enjoyed a huge amount of success. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these other games pop up in the market. But I guess that doesn't really explain why they're popping up around the same time. I believe, and this is my opinion, that they're popping up at the same time or similar time frames because of when they were, initially started in development. So think about a few years ago when a lot of these games started to do well. Fortnite, Apex Legend, PUBG, they were already doing well for a number of years. And I'm certain that a lot of these development firms looked and said, I think one thing that we can probably do is try to at least leverage a lot of the market right now that's really hot for these free-to-play games and make something and see what becomes of it. Well, not only one person had that idea, a number of studios and a number of developers had that idea. So give it 2 years down the road, what you're seeing is a lot of these games are already pretty much, made or at least revealed, and they're going to be coming out within the 24, 36 month cycle. And so now they're mostly all hitting the market at similar times. Even the ones from the indie studios and the ones from the big name studios, you're seeing all of them just jump into, the market, and every single one of them is claiming free to play. So I think this is the more realistic reason as to why this is the case. Now, what does this mean as a whole? Because a lot of people have interpreted this to mean this is going to be the end of single player games. This is going to be how the gaming development scene is going to go, and we're not going to find any, good games out there to play because these free to play games, all they're looking for is battle passes and all of the above. Now, the truth is a lot of free to play model games are looking for ways to be able to earn their money via in-game purchases, in-game currencies, and all of those stuff. But I have to quickly, say that the truth is, even though you kind of, say that there is a huge trend towards these, video games that are free to play with monetization strategies and all, the single player game is still here to stay. There is no doubt in my mind that developers are still going to be making single player experiences because there is a huge audience for those single player experiences. In fact, what you're going to see is once this phase of free-to-play games passes, which I told you guys has probably been games that have been in development for at least 2, 3, even maybe 4 years, depending. What you're going to see is the single player games that have been in development since the time that, games like God of War in 2018 got to enjoy a lot of success, and some other single player games in that time, Resident Evil and such. What you're going to see is development firms that have been working on their games around that time are going to then bring out the next wave of video games that will be in that single player category and single player genre. And these games take a while to develop. So what you're looking at is a 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6-year development cycle, and in some cases 8-year development cycle. Say in the case of Red Dead Redemption 2, you got to see those games, how they basically had been working on them for a while. Ghost of Tsushima, I think the developers talked about how they'd actually conceptualized the game somewhere around 2015 or so. So 2015 was when the conceptualization started and development, and then by 2020 they were able to develop the game. So a 5-year development window, or 4.5, depending on how you look at it. So that's a huge amount of time to get these games out. So if a game saw the success of God of War in 2018 and they got their hands on deck, 19, 20, 21, those games are still somewhere in development. You've probably not seen them by now. In fact, we can point to a good number of them that have been delayed, a good number of them that we haven't heard anything about, some of them that are being rumored. Just pick your favorite single player game that your favorite studio might be working on, and you're going to see that there are these trends that show that these games are probably going to be coming out 2022 earliest, and then for realistic purposes 2023, 2024. So this is, in my opinion, what I think the market is going to see. I don't think this is where all of the companies are going to pretty much go ahead and die over. They're not going to just throw all of their resources into free-to-play games, except that's what they specialize in. I think ideally what you're going to see is the big publishers are going to diversify. They're going to continue to do their thing in all fronts. EA is going to do Apex Legends, which is free to play. They're going to do FIFA, which is not free to play, but is basically a machine to be pumping money into their company. And then they're also going to be sponsoring their other studios that are going to be making their single player, experiences. Think about games like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I think there's another one being produced right now. Look at a game like Ghost of Tsushima. They even went ahead and added some extra DLC, which is going to be coming in a director's cut later down the road. Another thing too is the Uncharted series are finished, and Naughty Dog decided that they were going to do another rendition of The Last of Us. I thought the second game was a little unnecessary when you look at the story, but if they're working on another game or a brand new franchise or whatever it is still going to be at least half a decade in the making. So once this entire phase of free-to-play games start to wane away, you're going to then start to see more and more of the single player games. Also remember, there's another God of War Ragnarok game. There's a Horizon Forbidden West game as well that has not been announced in regard to a release date. Now, these are PlayStation exclusives. There's also talk that another Spider-Man game is in the works. There's also talk about, a potential Superman game being a second project from Warner Brothers Games Montreal. So I can sit here and just start to name a whole bunch of them that we're probably not going to be seeing for another 3 years. And I think this is where these games are. They're just in this development cycle. Now, even though we're going to be waiting for these games, it doesn't mean that there's going to be some kind of a drought with the single player games. No, you have companies like Ubisoft that will make their Assassin's Creed cocktail every 2 years or so, and so you can be guaranteed that there's more than likely going to be an Assassin's Creed game that's going to be coming out here in the future. I think Ghost of Tsushima might take on some level of a second game. Who knows, depending on how the developers at Sucker Punch, depending on what they're able to pull off, depending on the green light they get from Sony, and also the fact that they may be able to leverage a PS5 exclusive. They might make either a continuation of the Tsushima series, or they could just go ahead and make something, that is a different game down the road. They've done other games in the past, so it's not necessarily that they have to stick to Ghost of Tsushima or whatever. And Ghost of Tsushima was kind of cool because they added an online mode later down the road, but that wasn't necessarily their main focus. But again, they could just make sure that they're, continuing their game and keeping their fans up to speed. And they've done a good job in harnessing their market. Now, the reality is this: for people who want to make single player games, especially with a lot of these free to play games being a thing, I think what might happen is they're probably going to have to be very creative as to how they implement their marketing and how they continue to, put out what makes their audiences tick and stay attentive to their brand and franchise and not let them just go off anywhere. But I think what happens is the respect that you gain from releasing a solid product at first is enough for you to be able to sell more games down the road. And I think that's what it continues to prove. Now, if you look at, say, the Avengers game, the Marvel's Avengers game, you're going to see that, Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics really lost a lot of community goodwill when they tried to take the game into this live service style game and charge $60 for it. You see, that's the problem. That game, to me, potentially would have benefited from some sort of a free-to-play model, and then people can come in and buy cosmetics and all of the others. Instead, they took the $60 initial price tag, and then that did not necessarily sit well with a lot of the gaming community. So if you ask me, you really have to be creative and you really have to add value to your to your gamers. And so I think that's one of the reasons that they pretty much failed in their attempt to try to, gouge money from their own community. And this is something that didn't really sit well with them. But again, there's so much to this entire, single free to play versus single player games versus story driven games and all of the above, that you just have to look at it in windows because, again, like I said, whoever is working on a game is probably a few years out in the making. And usually those games are going to show up in the market at similar windows or similar time frames. And so not to worry, a lot of those games are cooking in the oven, or your favorite type of games anyways. If these new free-to-play games are not your thing, there's no need to worry. Just hold on a little bit. When those games are ready, they'll serve them to you. You buy whatever it is you want and enjoy. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Do you really, think that, the free-to-play model is going to take over everything? Or do you think there is still going to be a strong market for the single-player game, and there's also a strong need and, I would say, demand for them as well? Talk to you guys soon. Peace out.